Have you been blessed so far tonight?
Amen.
Praise God, praise God. I don't know about you all, but I'm so thankful that at the end of every week I can look forward to Impact, a time where I can come together with young people my age and just praise the God above. Isn't that amazing? We thank God for the Impact team, for you guys, just your prayerful service to this campus. It means a lot. If you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Genesis chapter 50. Genesis chapter 50.
Amen.
Genesis chapter 50. And while you're finding it, just to know that I'm in the right place tonight, has anyone ever experienced pain before? Pain. Yeah. You don't have to raise your hands, but is anyone experiencing pain right now? I am. This message is for those who are going through pain. Those who are going through pain. Genesis chapter 50, and I want to begin reading at verse 15. Thank you, John, for reading that passage from Psalm to give us some context. Genesis chapter 50, 5-0. The New International Version beginning at verse 15 says, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? So they sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father. When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. We are your slaves, they said. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Can I read that one more time?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. I've entitled our message, Forgiving God. Forgiving God. Would you pray with me? God, now more than ever, we need you. But we can't even begin to understand spiritual things without your spirit. In the room tonight, it's already been confessed, there's a lot of heavy hearts, pain. Address that pain, confront it, Lord, and for some, Lord, may this night not end until the pain is removed. For others, may this night not end until they give the pain to you. Then for still others, may this night not end until you just bring us to a place where we're just willing for it to be dealt with. Speak to our hearts, our lives, our situations. I admit, God, that I am not sufficient for this task. But don't let your people suffer because of my unworthiness. Send forth your word like rain, God. May it accomplish its purpose tonight. And in advance, we'll be careful to give you all the praise, the honor, and the glory. This is your moment. This is your moment. Amen. Again, I just want to thank Jamil and Rihanna for the awesome privilege to stand before you all tonight. It is custom that a sermon is delivered, but if you don't mind, I just want to share a testimony. I remember it like it was yesterday when my father died. And perhaps you're wondering how I was able to look my brothers in the face and tell them that all that they had done to me, I'd let go. And that I actually saw everything that was meant for my bad as now for my good. I must confess tonight that it really wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight. In fact, I was able to tell my brothers that after a long, painful process. It was one that took not months, but years. Years, painful years, separated from my younger brother, separated from my father, separated from the land that I was familiar with. Let me take you back to the beginning of that journey. See, I was only 17 years old, just trying to carry out a command that my father had given me. Go find your brothers and check up on them. So being the obedient son that I was, I went to go try to find my brothers. Now you gotta understand something about me and my brothers. Although we shared the same last name, that was pretty much all we had in common. We didn't even have the same mother. They had Leah and my mother was Rachel. And the only brother that I shared with her was Benjamin. And she died giving birth to him. You know, I don't know if you guys can relate with me, but isn't it funny how you can grow up in the same home with someone but still have no love for them? And it wasn't my fault. I mean, I didn't ask for my father's favor. I didn't ask for him to give me that robe. It was pretty nice though. I mean, 42 long, slightly tapered in the shoulders, double vent in the back, notch lapels. He did a good job on it. It fit me just right. You know how that is when you get that suit, fellas, that fits just right. Or maybe ladies, you can testify when you look across the aisle and see the brother who has that suit that fits. You know, kind of just right. It was like that. Had many colors on it. Interestingly enough, he traveled far and wide to get that special fabric to make this coat just for me. I didn't ask for it, but what can I say? I was loved by my father. But my father's love insinuated hate from my brothers because they thought that maybe, just maybe, my father would skip the eldest and skip the second oldest and maybe send the birthright on down to me. So they hated me. They were envious of me. So I could not expect what was about to happen next. I wasn't met with greetings of love and kindness. No one hugged me. No one slapped me a high five. But they accosted me. They grabbed me. They ripped my robe, that coat that my father had gifted me. And I thought they were teasing. You know how brothers, you know, boys will be boys. They were just trying to shake me up, scare me a little bit. But there was this pit. And I had seen it before. We had crossed it. And my father would always tell us, whatever you do, don't go to that pit. It was a deep pit. And they threw me down in that pit, and I can remember hitting my head on the rocks as I was going down. As I hit the bottom of the pit, I couldn't help but begin to cry. And I'm calling Reuben, I'm calling Levi, I'm calling Simeon, I'm yelling, Naphtali, come get me. It's not a game anymore. The joke is over. But they were laughing, saying, stay down there, you dreamer. What can you see now? It was dark. It was dank, but it was waterless, which is strange because this was a pit that the people would come and get water out to feed their camels. So somehow or another just happened so that when they put me in this particular time, there was no water in it. I think there was a reason for that, but we'll get to that a little later. I was hurting. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I could smell the lentils that they were cooking above me. And I asked them, well, listen, if you're going to play this game all night, at least send me some food down. They laughed, they chuckled, they didn't listen to me. Then I began to hear a strange conversation going on. And behind that conversation, camels were making their funny noises. And next thing I know, a rope was dropped down. And I'm thinking, yeah, guys, that's right. You can't wait till I get back to Dad. I'm going to tell Dad what you guys did. You know how he deals with y'all. Reuben, you know you're the one who can't even take it when Dad comes to you and be like, Reuben, why don't you look out for your brother? But I saw familiar faces, slightly darker than we are. The hair was a little finer than us. You know, being from the Canaan region, we had curly hair, but these men looked a little different. I said, guys, what's going on? Who are these people? They didn't say anything. I looked at Gad and he didn't say anything. I looked at Dan. I said, Dan, come on, man. Stop playing games. What's going on? Who are these people? Before I knew it, they were grabbing my wrists and wrapping them in ropes. Before I knew it, I saw money being exchanged from that group to my brothers. That knot, you know that knot that you get right here in your throat when you're trying not to cry. That churning in your stomach that happens when you can't understand what's about to take place. I said, guys, listen, don't do this. Guys, I'm sorry, I promise, I know you guys are kind of upset with me because of the dreams. I didn't know, please, whatever you do, do not let this happen. I cried and I pleaded with my brothers, and they acted like they did not know me. They were selling me into slavery as if I was some animal. I wish I could say that that moment was erased from my memory, but I remembered that moment for a very long time. Isn't it funny how those to whom you've grown the closest can do you the most wrong? And maybe you can relate with feeling pain, not from those you don't know, not from those who you don't love, but those who you see on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we played together. We laughed together. We didn't have all great times, but we had some good times. I could never imagine that my brother's hate would push them to sell me into slavery. And then what would become of Benjamin? Would they do the same thing to him? They hated him because they hated my mother. Would they do the same to him? I would never see my father again. I didn't know what the future held. All of these questions, all of the confusion, all of the unknowns in my future. But something happened while I was headed towards my unknown future. I began to look in the distant hills and see my father's tents, the smoke rising, and I could only imagine what hurt he was experiencing. And my mind began to go back to those old Bible stories that my dad talked to me about. He told me about my great-grandparents, Abraham and Sarah. How even though they were old in age, God came to them and said, you know, I'm going to be with you and I'm going to give you a child. I said, man, you know, maybe God, if he can open a barren woman's womb, then maybe he can just be with me. I began to think about my grandparents, Isaac and Rebecca, and how they met. You know, I don't know how Isaac looked. I never met him. I don't know about how Rebecca looked. I never met her. But my dad used to tell me that when Isaac saw Rebecca coming in the field, he just used to cry. And fellas, I don't know if you guys are in relationships, but let me just say, you know you're with the right one when she makes you cry. I said, man, if God can hook them up like that, then maybe he can be with me. But then I remember what God did for my father, Jacob. When he was laying in the open field on a rock, he had a vision of angels ascending and descending down this celestial ladder. And Jacob always told me, my dad, he said, son, listen, if you ever find yourself in doubt, remember that God is always with you. I said, God, listen, I'm young. I'm only 17 years old, and I can't even think what I did to deserve this. But if you can be with Abraham, if you can be with Jacob, and if you can be with Isaac, then maybe, just maybe, you can be with me. And I made a decision at that young age, as I'm going down this path to who knows where, I said, God, I want you to be my God. And everything I put my hand to, everywhere my foot goes, I'm going to live for you. And it was as if the invisible became visible, and I began to see God in a myriad of angels. Even though I was chained to this camel, God said, son, I'm with you. And so there, I began to see that we were approaching a city that I heard about, but I'd never been before. It was Egypt. I didn't know what was going to happen to me, but I had a slight, funny, kind of strange excitement. God had protected us as we come across this desert highway, and there they put me on this high wooden post, and me bare feet. They were burning on this platform, and there was a guy to the left of me. He was slightly taller, slightly bigger than me. Then there was a little girl next to me, and she was weeping. And we were all looking at this throng. There was about maybe half the size of what you guys are right now. And they began to call out numbers: 300, 200, 500, 400, 700, 350. And then there was a guy who yelled from the back from his chariot post, and he said, 1 million for the guy in the middle. I looked at him, he looked at me, we stared at each other for a moment. Then before I know it, they began to break the chains on my wrists and on my feet, and I was sent away. His name was Potiphar. He was about 55. He was very kind to me in a very strange way. I don't know why, but I think it has something to do with the fact that God said he'd be with me. And, you know, I committed to doing my best no matter where I was. So when I was in the field, I did good in the field. When I was in the house, I did good in the house. I mopped the floors till I could see my reflection in there. When it was time for me to go and clean out the kitchen, I did that too. I put the dishes in order where they were to go, because I think that when you're a servant of God, you never take any task lightly. I said, I don't know, they may not serve my God, they may not even think that he exists, but they're going to know that I know somebody when they look at what I do. And wouldn't you know that after a few months, I was promoted? I went from just a menial servant to one of those under managers. There were people over me, and then after that, after I performed those things well, then Potiphar said, you know, Joseph, I've been watching you, and you do things a little different. What is that whistling and that singing that you do while you're working? Well, I said, my dad always taught me that I ought to keep a song in my heart. So while I'm working, I just sing to keep myself encouraged. Okay, I've been watching you, and I see that you know how to cook. Well, you know, my mother actually taught me how to do a couple things in the kitchen. I'm not the greatest, but I try. I do what I can. Well, listen, Joseph, the supervisor, you know, he's getting kind of old in age, and he's served me for many years, but I'm going to take a risk on you. I don't usually hire guys your age, but would you be willing to look over all of my palace? I bowed my head in humility. I said, Mr. Potiphar, I would love to. He said, listen, Joseph, now there's two conditions now. I know you can cook, but whatever you cook, make sure it passes through them first. And that's my wife. You know my wife, Mrs. Potiphar. Yeah, I've seen her. Don't touch her. Oh, come on now. You know, never that. So here I am. God was with me. And when God is with you, sometimes he has a way of promoting you. And I thought, well, surely this is the reason that I was put in the pit. Surely this is the reason that I was sold into slavery. God had a purpose for me, and his purpose was for me to be in charge of Potiphar's household. I get it, God. You prescribed that pain. You see, sometimes God has us go through prescribed pain. What is prescribed pain? Prescribed pain is that pain that God recommends because he knows it'll benefit you. And so maybe tonight you're going through prescribed pain. That's the pain that you really can't understand, but you get to a point where you say, okay, it all makes sense now. I needed this. Good looking out, God. But then she began to come around. Help us is right. You see, whereas Potiphar was 55 years old, and that culture, it was custom for the wives to be a little bit younger. So at this time, I was only 22 and she was about 28, so we were close in age. She began to look at me, you know, a little differently than she did all the other servants. And me being the focused guy that I was, committed to the duty that Potiphar had given me, I was going about my task. Good morning, Mrs. Potiphar. It's good to see you, Mrs. Potiphar. You look lovely, Mrs. Potiphar. And I would keep going. But after a while, she began to want to have elongated conversations. Asking me about how I keep my hair so wavy and how do I keep my beard looking so fresh and everything like that. She began to comment on my physique and talk about how handsome and well built I was. And I gotta be honest, fellas, it was one of those situations where you're on the line between humility and pride. You're saying, yeah, you know you're right. But then I said, wait, no, I don't know about all that. Keeping true to duty, Potiphar told me, listen, I'm putting everything in your control except for my food and my wife. And I gotta be honest, listen, I was 22 and I was a virgin. Amen. And you gotta understand there's nothing wrong with being young and a virgin.
Praise God.
I don't know what your society says, but back then it was a little questionable. If you were a male in a certain age, people looked at you kind of funny, kind of questioned your orientation if you had never been in a woman. But my father told me your masculinity is not dependent on who you've been with, but who you can get with and stay with for the rest of your life. So she began to slip notes under the slave quarters. She began to say things to me that made me very uncomfortable. She began to try to approach me and touch me in places that you should not be touching. And listen, I said, listen, I cannot work in this environment. So I would do everything in my power to stay away from her because, listen, you can't overcome temptation if you want to stay in the company of the tempter. Maybe I should pause and say there's some people tonight who may be struggling with various temptations, but have you considered that you're still going to the tree?
Mercy. Talk about it.
I'm not going to hang with her. And I would begin to hear the servants whisper in the changing room. You know, Joseph, we see Mrs. Potiphar's kind of looking at you, bruh. Yeah. Hey, let me tell you, Joseph, if you decide to do this, hey, let me tell you what works. Because you know what? I was there last week. You see, Potiphar was a eunuch, so she was a desperate housewife. Always wanting to do things that were scandalous.
Wow.
You see, the word began to spread around the barracks that she wasn't just coming after me, but she was coming after a lot of us. And don't you know that's just how the adulteress is? She preys on the precious life. So one morning, I would wake up, 6 o'clock, do my devotion and have prayer, and I was going into work. And as I began to go to work, I noticed something different. I would tell the guys, listen guys, I'm going to get there at 6:30. You don't have to be there until 7. But 7 came and 7 went. 8 came and 8 went, and no guys came in. So I was a little upset, but then the harp began to play. And I began to look up at the banister of the balcony, and wouldn't you know it, Mrs. Potiphar is coming down the stairs. Now she's dressed in, I don't even want to disturb your imaginations by describing what she was wearing, but let me just say, fellas, it was less than more, and less is not always more, but in this moment, I had to make a decision. You see, whenever you're confronted with temptation, there's always that moment where you say, if I don't take the escape route now, I may not get out of this situation. Now, she had told me time and time again, listen, no one will ever know. It will be lodged in secrecy. But I said, listen, you don't understand. God has been with me. And even though I don't understand while I'm here, even though I don't understand all the painful experiences that he's allowed, he has blessed me with favor, not just from your husband, but he has blessed me with divine favor. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And I ran. I ran for my life. I ran out of there, and I ran and I prayed. I said, God, listen, I've just stood for you. Now you've got to stand for me. And I thought that he would do that because he stood for me before. He took me out of the pit. Surely he would honor my allegiance to him. A knock comes on the door.
Mr.
And I've never seen Potiphar's face like this before. It was as if he wanted to cry, but his dignified bearing wouldn't let him. It was that look that someone gives you when, they feel like they've been betrayed. Potiphar, I know how this looks, but you know me, Potiphar. You know me, you've seen me. He didn't say anything. He just stepped out of the way, and the guards came in and they put me in chains. Now that's twice in my life, God, that I've been put in chains. I was put in chains from those I love, and you delivered me. Now you let me put in chains again, and I honored you. Permitted pain. You see, I can understand prescribed pain, because prescribed pain means that, I benefit from it. But now permitted pain? What do I do to deserve this? I didn't ask for this, and maybe you guys go through permitted pain. There was some who said, yeah, I go through prescribed pain, but maybe you're going through permitted pain. You didn't ask to be born into the family that you're in. You didn't ask for your boyfriend or your girlfriend to cheat on you. You didn't ask for your mother or your father to give you up for adoption. You didn't ask for that. Permitted pain. You didn't ask for your parents to get a divorce. You didn't ask for them to abuse you when you were young. But God permitted it. What benefit could come of permitted pain? Now I'm in a prison cell. I was second in command. I was the head underneath Potiphar in his household. And now I'm in this dark prison, which reminded me of that dark pit. Well, strangely again, God came to me and he said, listen, son, if I could be with you in the pit, then surely I can be with you in the prison. And I met two guys. We'll call them Larry and Joe. Larry was a cupbearer and Joe was a baker. Funny guys, I tell you. We had some good conversations. And one particular morning, they had this looks on their faces. And I said, guys, what's going on? Larry and Joe, they're usually jovial, amiable spirits. And they said, we've had these crazy dreams. And I said, well, listen, this is going to sound completely crazy, but I know how to interpret dreams. They looked at me, they looked at each other, they looked at me, they looked at each other, they looked at me again, and they looked at each other. And said, Joey, come on, for real? You can interpret dreams? I said, no, try me. They told me their dreams, and I was a little hesitant to answer them because they were not the same. I said to one, I said, listen, you're going to be restored to your position, but the other, I'm sorry, but you're going to die. And as sure as I said it, that's how it happened. But to the one that was going to be delivered and promoted, I said, do me this favor. For what I've done for you, do not forget me. And he gave me his word. Now I'm excited because, again, I can see the horizon. I can see the sun coming up. I'm in this dark prison, but hey, praise God, God is about to deliver me. And have you been in those situations before? Where it looks like you're about to break through. It looks like the chain's about to be broken. It looks like things are going to break out for you. Things are going to work out for you. I understand, God, you permitted pain, but hey, trouble doesn't last always. Or weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I get it now, God. You had to allow me to do this to help them out. But 1 month turned into 2 months. 2 months turned into 6 months. 6 months turned into a year. And before you know it, it was a full 2 years later. And I wish I could say that I maintained this heroic spirit, that being in prison was easy, but it wasn't. I cried sometimes. I wanted to give up on God sometimes. The pain was so deep. that I actually considered giving up on God. And maybe you can relate with that. That you've been going through pain, not for 1 month, not for 2 months, not for 1 year, but for 2 years, or even far further than that. Even while you've been at Andrews, this complete time, undergrad or grad students, you've been going through pain, and you're trying to say, God, when will the pain end? Have you ever asked that question? I did. Night after night, until again, a knock came. Let me pause to say that even when man forgets you, God won't forget you. Because now someone else had a dream, and this wasn't Potiphar, this wasn't Larry or Joe. This was Pharaoh. Crazy dream, a dream that I never heard before. And he said, listen, I heard that you know how to interpret dreams. I said, yes, I can't interpret dreams. He tells me the dream, and I tell him what it was. There's going to be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. He said, well, listen, you seem to be the one who knows how to deal with this conundrum, this problem that's coming. So wait a minute, God. You allowed me to go through a pit, to a household, to a prison, and now you're about to bless me to be second in command in all of Egypt. Prescribed pain, permitted pain, purpose pain. Now, I can understand prescribed pain because, I can benefit from that. Now I'm beginning to understand permitted pain because even though I don't understand it, God does. But now, purposed pain. God came to me and he said, listen, son, what you've got to understand is any pain that I allow in your life comes prepackaged with my presence. And it's so filled with purpose that if you give up too early in your pain, you'll never arrive at the end destination that I have for you. Now I'm second in command in Egypt. I'm 30 years old. It took 13 years to get there, but let me tell you how God blessed. I thought that he was not honoring me by allowing me to go into prison by standing for him for Mrs. Potiphar, but he honored me a little later on. You know why? Because I got a wife now. And she's so beautiful. I love her with everything in me. She is God's continuous sign of his grace to me. I would give all for my wife. Her name's Asa now. Yeah, she's the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. And guess what? I got 2 boys now, and they look just like me. And God says, listen, if you would have succumbed to temptation with Mrs. Potiphar, you wouldn't have been able to say to your wife, baby, I waited for you. And we're going to go to school together. We're going to learn to do this together. Now God said, you need to do something for me. Name your boys so that you can always remember what I did for you. So I named my firstborn Manasseh. And Manasseh simply means because God has made me to forget my pain in all the land of my suffering. And then I named the second one Ephraim. And Ephraim means because God has turned my land of pain into my land of promise. And let me suggest this. Whenever God brings you through pain, be it prescribed, permitted, or purpose, you've got to signify something in your life so that you never forget, if it had not been for the Lord on my side, I wouldn't have made it here. But then it gets a little bit more interesting because these 10 guys stroll up in my office one day. Now, they don't recognize me, but I recognize them. And it took everything within me from doing to them what they had done to me. They bowed down at my knees, and it was just as I remembered in my dream. They said, sir, we've come many miles to get some food for our younger brother and our father. Could you please help us? I spoke in a language that they could not understand, so my translator told them, what have you come for again? You're spies. I was trying to see, had all these years really changed their characters, or did they remain the same? So I kept one of them in prison. I told them, listen, go get the younger brother that you have. They said, we can't do this. We've already lost one brother. They didn't know that they were looking at the lost brother. We can't do this to our father again. He thinks he's lost his one son. He can't leave, and he can't let go of the youngest one and lose him too. I said, listen, unless you want this brother to be set free, you bring back that youngest one. Now, little secret, I was never intending to hurt them, but I wanted to see, was there really a change in. I wept so loud that my whole household heard me cry. I couldn't take it. Finally, when it was too much, I went to them and I took off the headgear that we had to wear as princes. And I told them, I'm your brother Joseph. I wish you could have seen the look on their faces. It was as if the levees broke and the tears began to flow. They were expecting me to cast them into slavery like they had done to me, but I pulled them close and we embraced and we hugged. And let me tell you, you are missing out on something if you continue to maintain a spirit of unforgiveness. There was nothing more grace-filled, more mercy-filled. There's nothing that portrays the divinity and the compassion of your God like forgiving those that have hurt you. I was now in a position to exact judgment on them, but instead I showed grace. And I don't take credit for it because, again, it was only God who did that. You see, God came to me throughout these years of my life, and he began to tell me his side of my story. He said, listen, Joseph, you remember that pit? It was me who drained the water. You remember that prison? It was me who got you promoted. You think you're the one who resisted Mrs. Potiphar, but no, it was me who was there. I had angels that you couldn't see, protecting you from dangers seen and unseen. He began to let me know that at every point in my experience, he was with me. Let me encourage you, my brother and my sister. I don't know where you are in your journey. I don't know whether you're having prescribed pain or permitted pain or purpose pain, but we can all agree we're going through pain. Let me tell you, God is with you. You may not see him. You may not perceive him. And this bothered me. I couldn't even feel him at times. God, I don't have to see you, but let me just feel you. Let me know you're near. Give me a song, give me a word, let somebody pray for me, let me know that you're here. But sometimes you won't feel like it. But hey, listen, I learned at a young age that feeling cannot be the foundation of your religion. You've got to see the invisible. You've got to walk by faith and not by sight. And so now he has me in this position. He says, Joseph, I want you to forgive your brothers. Everything that I thought I'd lost was restored to me. My younger brother, my brothers, and oh, I can't forget my father. Can you imagine the look on his face when the son he thought he lost was restored to him? I was never dead, but to him I was resurrected again, so it was a miracle. We embraced, we cried, we caught up. I introduced him to my wife and my two boys, and he took them on as his own. And then that painful day came, and it's going to come for all of us, where he died. But he didn't die without seeing his son again, and that fear that my brothers had on that first day when we met came back again. And they created this story. They had been changed, but they weren't all changed, but it's okay. I was patient with them. They created this little fib. They said, listen, Daddy said before he died, if you could just forgive us. I said, listen, guys, am I in the place of God? Do I have the right to pay you back for the wrongs you did to me? And I've never said this to anyone before. It's not like I rehearsed it. I don't know where it came from. But this statement, you intended to harm me by throwing me in that pit. I remember your faces, fellas. I called on you guys, every one of you. I called your names. You didn't listen to me. You laughed while they were taking me away. You don't know what I've been through in this land. I had to learn a new language. I had to go to school all over again. But everything you intended to do to harm me, God meant it for my good. So fellas, don't worry. I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to take care of your kids. Look at all this. You guys are going to be all right. I stopped by just to testify because I know what it is to be young and go through pain. But I also know what it is to get a little bit older and see that God always has a purpose for your pain. Here's my appeal. If you're saying, God, I want to trust you with my pain, prescribed, permitted, or purposed, I want you to stand. God, right now we come. Thank you, Lord. Because you've got a purpose for our pain. Thank you, God, for keeping Joseph Thank you, God, for keeping me. Thank you, Lord, for keeping my friends here tonight. We're so glad that at every point in the journey, you are with us. Lord, we don't like talking about pain because we have to be vulnerable. We've got to talk about things and people that hurt us. We're confronted with the decision of forgiving or not. God, tonight as we heard your word, all of us were confronted with memories of our own experiences where family members, loved ones hurt us. And God, not only have you been challenging us to forgive them, but here it is, God, you're telling us, you guys need to forgive me. Many of us have been holding you hostage because of what you permitted to happen in our lives. If you're omnipresent, if you know everything, you're everywhere, why didn't you stop it from happening, God? But tonight, Lord, you don't have to answer that question anymore, because you know what? We're letting the pain go into your hands. We're trusting that you have collected every tear that we've cried, every question that we've asked has not gone unobserved, has not been collected, and we're praying, God, that sooner than later you will begin to clarify the purpose for our pain. And we commit to signifying something in our life, whether it's how we name our children, whether it's keeping a journal, whether it's passing down an heirloom. I don't know what it will be for anyone in this room, but we're going to mark something to say, this signifies God getting me through my pain. Break the chains of pain in our lives so that you may have fuller access to us. And God, we say thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.